Well, there has been a lot of anticipation on how the United States policy towards Palestine will shape under the next U.S. administration, the Obama administration. Analysts are divided. Some say things will improve, while others see Obama as the strongest ally of Israel. Well, for more on how the president-elect might deal with the Palestinian-Israel dispute, we are joined now by Ziad Asali from the American Task Force on Palestine. He's here in Washington, D.C. We are also joined by Sari Makdisi, an author and analyst. He's the author of the book Palestine Inside Out, An Everyday Occupation. Mr. Asali, I want to begin with you. Do you think that we will see a different approach towards Palestine with an Obama administration?
Well, in principle, the same policy will hold. The two-state solution, which is at least the proclaimed policy of the Bush administration, is going to be adopted by the Obama administration. The question is one of implementation, whether the energy that the Obama crowd will put into this will accelerate as compared to the lack of real enthusiasm and implementation that the Bush administration has put in, except for the last year.
Mr. Makdisi, do you agree with that?
No, I mean, it seems pretty clear that Obama is going to pursue a policy more or less like that of Bush, and if not Bush, then certainly Clinton before him, which basically means more of the same. And we have to remember that the two-state solution was something that was entered into in its current formulation in 1993. It's now 2008, coming up on 2009, and we're nowhere near the implementation of a two-state solution. So the question is, how much longer is this charade going to go on, and when will Palestinians, above all, realize that the time has come to change and to start an entirely new approach to this conflict with the Israelis?
Mr. Asali, some might say that many of the players are familiar faces. So how could there be change? For instance, we see Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, and as well Rahm Emanuel as the Chief of Staff. I mean, these are all staunch supporters of Israel. Do you think that Palestine's going to get the attention that many people are hoping from this administration?
Well, I think there is no question but the United States is committed to Israel and has a strategic relation with Israel. Anybody who thinks otherwise or expects otherwise will be sorely disappointed, but that's not the only issue. The other issue is, of course, whether forming a state of Palestine is in the national interest of the United States, and more so now than any time in the past, and also is in the interest of Israel. The political landscape in the Middle East has changed over the course of the past few years, which makes the creation of Palestine an issue of national interest to the United States, and that is why it is not just the proclaimed policy, but it is the implementation of this policy that's expected of the Obama people, even though some of the players are the same.
But I have to really ask you, sir, because there's always been this sort of unquestioning support for Israel. Do you think moving forward that we're going to see that same sort of unquestioning support when it comes to Palestine? How can you address those issues when really the sides are tipped in favor of one over the other?
Well, as I said before, the United States is a strategic ally of Israel, period, full stop. This is a fact, and this is a political fact that we are not going to be able to change anytime soon. The other question, is whether the United States can, in fact, sustain its present policy of talking about the Palestinian state without implementing it and expecting things not to deteriorate and impact very negatively on the regional policy of the United States, if not the policy in general, and the backlash against the United States in the Arab Islamic world, if not beyond. And this is why we think it is very important that this issue be visited and revisited to make sure that the implementation follows not just out of the goodwill of the people who are in charge, but out of the national interest, the dictated necessity of the forces that need to be applied.
Mr. Makdisi, do you think that the U.S. can support Palestine and the Obama administration can really put that on the agenda when there is so much unquestioned support of Israel?
No, I don't. And I think it's quite clear. In fact, what Mr. Asali just said shows you the limitations of this approach, which has dominated, I'm sorry to say, the official Palestinian leadership for so long. If you look at the way he expressed it, it's all about what's in Israel's interest and what's in America's interest. I think the Palestinians should be looking out for their own interests, first of all, not trying to fit themselves into an Israeli and American narrative and an Israeli and American set of interest and domination and so forth. I think what the Palestinians need to do is to look at the situation very clearly and think, in crystalline terms, they've been playing this game with the Israelis now since 1993. It's a losing game. I mean, as you said, the deck is stacked against them, the rules are stacked against them, the whole thing is stacked against them. So they can go on playing this game and hoping that they're going to get crumbs from the Israelis and the Americans, or that somebody's going to throw them a bone or whatever. But the point is, it's just crazy to go on playing a losing game. If you just look at what's happened in the occupied territories, just in the year since the Annapolis summit last November, the Israelis have increased the production of settlements in the occupied territories. They've put more people into the settlements. They've built more buildings. So the question is, how much longer are Palestinians going to go along playing this game and saying, well, we have to fit ourselves into what's in Israel's interest and in America's interest? The point is, if you're playing a losing game and you're losing because it's stacked against you, you play a different game. You don't go on playing the same game you've already been playing. You have to change the rules. You change the game. You come up with another way of approaching this topic, and that's something that will, I think, put the Israelis on the wrong foot. And that's what you have to do in a political crisis like this.
Mr. Asali?
Yes, establishing a state of Palestine is first and foremost is in the interest of the Palestinian people. It is ending the occupation. This has to be the central preoccupation of the Palestinians and those who pretend or intend to defend the Palestinian national interest. There is no dignity for the Palestinians without a Palestinian state, and there is no resolution of the conflict without a Palestinian state. Any other thoughts about, other formulations are first off, they are ahistorical because they do not acknowledge the fact that the PLO and all the Palestinian struggle started in order to liberate all of Palestine. And from 1967 till 1988, when the PLO acknowledged the two-state solution, the whole issue of resistance was one of trying to liberate the whole of Palestine. That, of course, reached the military limit, not just of the Palestinians, of the 22 Arab states and the 55 Muslim states. So talking about resistance as if it's something new is just ahistorical. There is no other option. There is no military option for the Palestine-Israel conflict. Israel cannot get rid of the Palestinians, and the Palestinians cannot get rid of the Israelis. So there has to be a negotiated settlement.
And final word we're going to give to Mr. Makdisi. We're almost out of time. As we move forward with this Obama administration, I'll give you the last word, sir.
Okay, the point is, I didn't say military resistance. That's something he said. The point is, it's very clear. I'm not saying there needs to be military resistance. That's not an option for anybody at this point. What there needs to be is to focus on the fact that the two-state solution focused on only 20% of historic Palestine and a minority of the Palestinian people. The solution that Palestinians should work for is one that addresses all of the needs of the people all over the world, of the Palestinian people all over the world, those in exile, those under occupation, and those living as fifth-class citizens of the state of Israel.
And how
That's
do you
what
intend
needs
to get
be
there?
addressed.
How do you intend to get there?
Okay, gentlemen, we are out of time, sadly. We are going to have to wrap this up, but obviously there's plenty more opportunities for discussion, and we'll certainly try to bring you both back. In the meantime, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.